right, good morning. So nice to have you with me today. Grab a coffee, tea, water, dive into a little fasting space with me today. Fasting can make you strong. That's what I'm going to talk about today. I think on the channel a lot, I've talked about, fasting can make you mentally strong. And that I really love, developing resiliency and a toughness and grit that can help you, yes, with a weight loss path, but because the fasting space is so connected in with our mental health in general, helping to find a space of peace, contentment, wellness, wholeness, that can bleed over into so many areas of our life. And so fasting, a process for becoming mentally strong. But today I'm going to dive in more on the physical side, that fasting also can make us physically strong. And this is something that I think is really underappreciated. I think there's a kind of a classic thought, if we're fasting, we're going to be weak. I think we need to start really looking at what is happening in the fasting space and say, is that really true? In the very short term, when we have not had fasting experience, when we're in grooves and routines that are based on constant consumption, the body gets used to that. You start to open up some fasting space. And the very first times you do it, I think the body is like, whoa, what are you doing to me, And so if you're not used to it, can the blood sugar come down? Yes. Can that feel low energy? Absolutely, it can. But this is not the normal state in the body. The normal state in the body is that fasting is at the core of the metabolism. It's something that the body needs and expects and uses to promote health. And one of the ways that it promotes health is by creating a hormonal environment that helps to promote strength and muscle building. And if you think about it, if you get into the deep history of human beings, we have seasons that we go through, and, we plant and store up, and then lean season comes, the winter, the famine, people making it through a fasting space historically. And if every time you were fasting, you just burned through your muscle and became weak and debilitated, it would be very, very difficult to survive in the past. And here we're in this Gilded Age with infinite food, and so thankful for that. That's wonderful. But can we dive into the physiology then to say, really, some very interesting things happen in the body in the fasting state, one of which is protein recycling. I think all of the RDA studies are done. How much protein does someone need in a day? Nobody creating these broad recommendations for people who are activating natural protein recycling pathways through fasting. So to someone who says, I'm intimidated by fasting, I don't want to lose muscle, we're going to dive into some interesting studies here today. We're going to look into it. I'll tell you my experience personally, absolutely, fasting can make you strong. And I've been experiencing that. The good thing about this is that you don't have to know every type of study. You can dive in and experiment with this practice and see, am I getting stronger through a practice? Or do I not feel that way? And that's something that you can just come to understand on a personal level. So I thought, and we dive in, I'd do a couple little slides for you. I thought I'd just put the last slide first to kind of frame it for us after I put it together. Fasting muscle building checklist. So The goal that I have for everybody, lean and strong. That's what I think is the goal. Leaner and stronger in any event. If fasting made you weak, I would not like it. I would not do it. I have no interest in being weak. I want to be strong. Who doesn't want to be strong? And being strong, doesn't have to mean like bulking up and getting huge and ripped, but having like just core functional strength, so that you can do the stuff that you want to do in your life with greater ease. And so who doesn't want that? That's what I want for everybody. Lose weight is like the focus of everything that I do. But lose weight while getting stronger would be optimal. Absolutely. So how do you move toward it? Okay, step 1, appropriate fasting interval. So that can mean a lot of different things. I'm going to review 2 different little studies with you to show you some things that have been researched. And, one of these studies is a longer fasting process, which is something that nobody has to do. But it's fascinating that even in a longer fast, over a week, people doing great on strength. And we'll glean some really interesting information from it. And then I'll review a study just on 16-8, all right, where people eating over an 8-hour window, having 16-hour fasting window daily. And so we kind of look at that. There's different perspectives, and fasting can be anything in between there. You can start on the very easiest end, open up a couple hours in a day, more than you usually would. And then we're practicing that now. Grab a coffee, tea, settle in, and let the body have some extra space. Do all the house cleaning, get all the stuff in order. And one of the things that it can be doing in that space is like tending to our muscle function and repairing, building, strengthening. So dial in on a fasting interval can be anything along the spectrum, actually. Don't have to be intimidated by that. Second step, eat nutrient-dense foods in your eating window when you're eating, okay? In order to build muscle, you need protein to do that. And we have a lot more resources in the body than we appreciate because of these protein recycling pathways. But you need nutrients, you want protein coming in to boost that system up. We do lose protein to some degree always during the day. And so we want to balance that out when we're eating, give the body the building blocks that it needs. So minimize processed food coming in, fruits and vegetables, healthy protein sources, all of this you want. Enjoyable aerobic and anaerobic activity. And this is the big key that we're going to see in the fasting studies, is that fasting, okay, it can be a space. You don't have to do anything else. It can be a space extremely productive where you can be active and feeling full of energy. And when you are active in a fasting space, you are sending key signals and hormones to the body to build muscle and to strengthen and condition the muscle. And that is a fantastic signal to send. And that is, something we really want. And we'll get that in these little studies we'll review. And then have a wellness mindset. So I've talked about that a lot. Like, if you're moving toward any sort of process, but it's burning you out and you're feeling stressed, like, okay, cortisol, not your friend. Chronic stress, not your friend. Cortisol in the short term, having actually some help in tissue repair when it's in balance. But if a process is stressing you out and it's leading you, like we did the other week in that inflammation talk, if you're having chronic inflammation, chronic stress, that's not going to create an environment that ultimately is conducive for muscle building and strength and staying strong. So use all these practices on this checklist as wellness practices, opening up some peaceful space, giving your body core nutrition, finding enjoyable, I like called leisure activity, right? Just an activity, walking, yoga, if it's some lifting some weights, whatever it is that you enjoy, approach it all from a wellness mindset, okay? And we will approach this with some data here coming up. Have you had an experience with this prior to this talk? I'd be curious of your experience. Have you experienced feeling increased strength during a fasting interval as you've practiced it? Have you experienced that initially, where you say, okay, initially there's a transition, you have to kind of pass through and learn to get through that. Just like any sort of strength training program, I always tell people, got to walk before you can run, right? And then I tell people with fasting, got to sit before you can walk. So always you want to be able to just handle a fasting space. That's a kind of strength that is actually not appreciated, I think. Like, are you strong enough metabolically in the body to just handle a couple hours without food? Have you trained out the ability? Does the body have the strength, the inner core strength to handle that? So when the food isn't right there, then the body can say, hey, we're strong. We've practiced this. We know how to do this. We've got access to body fat, tons of energy there. We can use it. Okay, so that's a strength right there. All right, let me show you this paper that I read this week. Is muscle and protein loss relevant in long-term fasting in healthy men? Now, that's the study. Now, I don't know, so many of the fasting studies, they have men fasting. I just comment on it. You can look on YouTube, channels fasting for women, and these are popular things. I'll just tell you my quick perspective. Like, human beings are built to fast, and I watch through these fasting women's channels. They say, okay, menopause is real, absolutely, and hormonal cycles are real, and some people struggle during those times for different reasons, and some people don't, just like men struggle for different reasons and don't. So just because a study says the fasting is in men, women just as strong as men in a fasting space, so don't be thrown off. Prospective trial on physiological adaptation. So here is what they say. Fasting attracting increased interest as a potential strategy for managing disease, including metabolic disorders and complementary cancer care. We should do a deep dive on that. So amazing. We should be talking much more about that. This study was to measure metabolic and muscular response in healthy men during and after a 10-day fast combined with a physical activity program. So like I said, I don't have anybody fasting for 10 days. I say simple fasting. Let's dive in on the low end of the spectrum. Let's make things as easy as possible. And then just bring things up to an effective place that gets you the results you want. And just about everybody, you dial in a OMAD, 1 meal a day eating, or throw in a fasting day on some interval. People trying to lose weight, that's a process that can really help you lose weight. But I thought this would be really interesting to look into, because it's like, okay, if we open up this perspective and look in a larger space, I want to show people, you don't have to be intimidated even of a longer fast, right? As far as becoming weaker, losing muscle, very interesting things happen. give you some encouragement. Okay, in the short term, how much more is the body able to handle these shorter bits of fasting, and help you dial in a better way. And so we'll look at this little bit longer fasting study and then a 16-8 one, just to put it in perspective. "16 men, average age 44, fasted with a supplement of 250 calories a day and up to 3 hours of low-intensity physical activity." So this is like what I was saying the other week in one of those sessions. Like, very rare that you actually find a fasting study that is actually pure fasting. And so, that's okay. I made that fasting aids video the other week. And this is basically 10 days of fasting using fasting aids, which is just fine. And it would be very interesting to see, an arm in these studies that is comparing the fasting aids to just actual pure fasting. But such as it is, just realize what they're doing in the study. They'll show you later on here. Okay, so just look through the abstract. 10 days of fasting. In 10 days, people lost 7% of their body weight. Some of that is water in the short term. They had some slowing of the basal metabolism out by 10 days, and we've checked out that effect in previous sessions as well. As far as these patterns, we see initial increase and then a little bit of decrease as you fast longer and longer. That's why I keep people on the short end. A marker of protein in the urine that they're tracking as far as protein loss, increasing out to day 5 and then decreasing, suggesting protein sparing might follow early proteolysis, all right? Meaning we're using some protein initially, and then it really slows down as we get into the fasting process. Here's the key things I want to share, and then we'll dive into it. Strength was maintained in non-weight-bearing muscles and increased in weight-bearing muscles. Think of that. Fast for 10 days and strength increased. That's something that people do not appreciate. Blood sugar better, insulin lower, cholesterol better, blood pressure lower. It's so nice to see these things. After a transient reduction, inflammatory cytokines return to baseline by day 10. So this is what we talked about in the inflammatory studies the other week. Reducing inflammation, and then reducing inflammation, and then inflammation increasing, that controlled autophagy effect as the body is using inflammation properly to help heal the system. Amazing. All right, I just give you a few quick highlights in this paper. I love how they introduce it. Until early humans were able to store food, they were subjected to seasonal cycles of food abundance and scarcity associated with recurrent periods of fasting, which likely selected adaptive mechanisms for survival. I think this is the way I love to frame it, It's like we are these short-lived creatures, and we kind of grew up in this society. We take this as normal, but you start looking into the past and you realize this is not completely normal, what we're dealing with, and many good parts to it, but we're missing out on this core physiology in the body, fasting right at the core of our physiology. And when you start to see it, you realize, okay, there's like some ways that we can really use this to our advantage. So here's what they did. We used a peer-reviewed protocol consisting of a fasting program combined with physical activity and a mindfulness program to improve fitness and reduce stress. See, this is my type of thing, right? This is why I love this study, because It's like my study, what I do. We want all those things, right? Helping to lose weight, get strong, reduce stress. Love it. Here's the fasting protocol. During fasting, all subjects received 20 grams honey each morning. You know, why? That's what I say. Why for the study? But that's what they did. 20 grams honey each morning with 2 to 3 liters of water or tea, and then an organic, freshly squeezed juice served at noon, and then vegetable broth in the evening. So there you go. That's like my fasting aids video, and they're using it all, day, basically. Just fine. This is a joke to me. During the fasting period, an enema was applied every other day in order to remove intestinal remnants. Like, why? This is what okay, I've done a fasting study for 6 months for people, 0 enemas, okay? So I would say don't need that. Fasting should be pleasant. You don't need to stress people with that. That would be my suggestion. Fasting was combined with a low to moderate intensity program of physical activity led by certified trainers. 1-hour gymnastics class included whole body stretching and yoga, and outdoor walks for 30 minutes in the morning and 90 minutes in the afternoon. So this study to me, just sounds great. Like, it sounds like going to a retreat. And I would like to sign up, go somewhere fasting. Hopefully it's in a beautiful place, and then you go have trainers like leading you through exercises and all of this. I think it sounds great. I picture running a study like this or doing a retreat like this in some beautiful place, like in the mountains, and then so you're surrounded in a peaceful place, and then you can just do this. We should do it. All right. Here's how they're testing some of this muscle function. Submaximal work rate determined with an incremental exercise tolerance test on an exercise bike. And they did this at baseline, and then in the middle of the fasting, and at the end, and then at follow-up. And then they tested their muscle function with various, tools to figure out, strength. We don't have to go into it. Grip strength and bench press and stuff like this. Okay. Here are some pretty graphs for you. You can see weight is coming down as they're fasting. Waist circumference coming down. Blood pressure coming down. The checkered bar at the end is the follow-up, like 3 months later, where people were not put on, they did not maintain this. As far as they didn't maintain any sort of fasting process. Weight still lower. Blood pressure still a bit lower, but, they didn't stick with any sort of fasting process. Maximal grip strength and fatigability remain unchanged during fasting. Leg strength was increased and remained so even at follow-up. That was 3 months later. So even 3 months later, leg strength increased after this. Work-to-power ratio increased after 4 days of fasting. This just rung a big bell to me because I've done a couple longer fasts in my life. Most of the time, I do a 16-8 most of the time. Sometimes I will dial in on an OMAD once a month or so. I personally will have a fasting day just to ramp up that autophagy effect. But I personally, I'm lean now. I'm very active. I've burned off every bit of extra body fat I ever didn't want. And so, I use fasting sparingly for purposes like concentration, focus, autophagy effect. And, if I could do it, I would do a lot more fasting. But you've got to bring it into the right balance for you. But when I read this, I thought, okay, the first time I did a 7-day fast, my experience, I've said before, first day, no big deal, because I was used to doing it. Second day, extremely difficult. I found it a very great personal challenge. And then day 3 was just wild because hunger completely disappeared, and I just got out on the bike. I had so much energy, and I just tore it up on my road bike, and that's what I felt. And then that's so interesting just to see that. They're putting these people on the bike. They fasted for 4 days. People never done it before, and their strength is increased. That's what I want people to see. Like, there's like real physiology happening in that space. It's counterintuitive, right? Most people think they'd be like, by day 4, you're like, oh, like dying. But like most people who actually do it, you break through that into that pure fasting space, is like people find the opposite, rejuvenating, strengthening. CRP remained unchanged during the intervention. Pro-inflammatory cytokines, which you know about now, TNF-alpha, IL-6 from that inflammatory talk, all dropped and then came back to baseline. So interesting. And then hormonal changes. So perceived hunger either unchanged or transiently reduced during fasting and then increased to baseline and at the follow-up. So that's the process also with the longer fasting. It's like, it's counterintuitive, but the process is actually suppressing hunger. But I'll say once you get through that wave, like you get through that wave, and then the body's kind of getting the idea, well, we're like not eating now. We can shut down all these hormones that are driving hunger. This is how you can really break out of hunger craving cycles. Leaning into fasting, ironically, is the process that helps you break out of hunger and craving cycles. Counterintuitive, but counterintuitive from our culture, but it's like, okay, things are pushed in one direction, you like push in the other direction to recenter, right? To bring things back into alignment. That's a lot of what can happen in a fasting space. Bringing the body back into alignment, giving it space to know what it needs to do. The body is running all this metabolism. We don't really control it. And so when we open up space, we're kind of giving the body like a little free rein to say, hey, you know what to do here. What does the body need? That's a fasting space, maintenance mode for the body. And then check out this section. Urinary cortisol concentration, a marker of stress, was 36% lower on the last day of fasting. So nice to see, right? So, they're doing multiple things at once. They're taking a break in this study, people going to a nice place, doing a mindfulness program, having exercise, and then doing this fasting thing. Okay, look, the stress is coming down. You can measure it and see the cortisol coming down. Awesome. All right, so in this section, they're outlining just these 3 phases that they're citing some animal models. In fasting, 3 phases of fasting. In the first phase, which is like within the first 24 to 48 hours, okay, we're burning through our glycogen stores. That's our sugar storage. Body cells start relying on fat and protein. And then we phase over into phase 2, where we switch into mainly our fat burning mode. And then depending on how much body fat we have, determines how long we can stay in that. And then they're saying, okay, phase 3 would be like, you've burned through, all the sugar is gone. You've burned through all the fat. Okay, you do turn to protein, but the protein is precious for the body. Protein, the muscle, is how you fight and hunt and gather and all this stuff. You need it. Most fasting studies in humans, they say you stay in phase 2 for an extremely long period of time. our results support the hypothesis that these adaptations are evolutionarily selected for. Muscle function maintained or improved, suggesting changes in protein breakdown did not negatively impact muscle function. Yeah. Yeah, so when you tease into the data on this in the paper, people lost weight. We say they lost 7% of their body weight. Some amount of weight of that is from a little bit of muscle loss, technically, in the short term from this lean, soft tissue that they have in here. But the strength increased. This is what's so interesting. And you think what is happening in the body to make this data be the case. The body is like getting rid of the excess. It's getting rid of the things and remodeling and like building back better, basically. Building it into a stronger and more functional state, like toning everything up. And I just think this paper outlines some really beautiful ways that it's doing that. Because this is what we want, right? People lost preferentially body fat in this study, and they had some activity, and their stress went down, and their strength went up. I love that. Now here, just for another perspective, is a paper on 16-8, and this is in young men who are weightlifting. And so, say the present study sought to investigate the effects of intermittent fasting protocol, basically 16-8, during weightlifting in healthy men, okay? And so I picked this study because it's like, okay, the other study was showing people basically like walking, doing yoga, and they're not doing something very, intense, but still it showed increased strength. That's great. And then longer fasting. And then so this study is going on the other end. Say, okay, just in 16-8, because I was thinking through, like, part of the data in that longer term study was showing like, okay, by day 5, like, protein conserving mechanisms like super kicking in. And so I've been thinking about like, well, what is the interface between a longer fast and then a shorter fast, which I'm doing? And part of it is like in a shorter fast, you are in a routine of it. And so you're putting the body physiologically in a space, we're keeping those glycogen levels lower. As you're building out your experience with that, you're making it easier and easier for your body to get into this protein-sparing space where we're relying on body fat energy. And I think, a study like this shows that. 34 men randomly assigned to time-restricted feeding or normal diet group. Subjects in the timed eating consumed 100% of their energy in 8 hours each day. They still ate 3 meals in that window. So, this isn't really pure fasting either. Time restricted, it's getting a bigger fasting window. I've done some thinking about, okay, if we're doing just time restricted eating, but we aren't changing the calories, can you really consider it fasting? You could split, have an argument about it, but they're eating between 1 and 8. And then the normal diet group eating, basically over 12 hours from 8 to 8. And then groups matched for calories. So this was not a weight loss focused study. They're just trying to say, does having this bigger, food-free interval lead to any changes in muscle function? This is what people are concerned about, especially some people like this, young guys trying to like bulk up and get stronger. Is fasting going to be detrimental to their muscle function? It's kind of like a perfect group to study it in. Here's a big takeaway. After 8 weeks, I think wasn't it in here, they said the average BMI in this group, something was like 26 or something. After 8 weeks, a decrease in fat mass in the timed eating compared to normal diet, while fat-free mass, muscle area of the arm and thigh, and maximal strength were maintained in both groups. So this was a group not really fasting, but timed eating, not calorie decreased in any way. People just getting that fasting interval. And what they showed, muscle function using that protocol preserved, and people lost fat without losing muscle. That's the big takeaway. These people, for 2 months, doing 16-8 while they're weightlifting, and they burned off fat without burning off any muscle. And so that is the balancing side to me to that first study, which is like a very long fasting, very significant calorie reduction, using basically fasting aids for 10 days and doing gentle activity. Strength increased, okay? And then here we are in a study over 2 months, doing 16-8, doing this fasting sort of window. While staying active, you're preserving, in this group, muscle function while burning off body fat. Like, that is like a beautiful thing to do. And I think it outlines the potential of what is possible when using fasting. That you don't have to be afraid of it. Like I was saying at the beginning, if fasting made me weak, I would never do it. I would rather, I think if I had to choose, be overweight but strong, or, lean but weak, I'd probably choose overweight and strong, probably. It would be hard. Who wants to be weak? You want to thread the needle between those two, leaner and stronger. That's a fasting path, can really be consistent with that and can help you with it. Let me know if you have questions about any of that. Happy to dive into details or perspectives on it. Those are the things you want to bring together. Okay, is it fasting that makes you strong all by itself? Certainly on the mental side, it certainly is. Fasting help you very much build mental strength, find peace and contentment without food. A beautiful way to lose weight. And the body does not want to lose muscle, even if you aren't being that active. So I tell people, some people stressed out by exercising. Some people say, like, I can't handle it now. You don't have to exercise to lose weight fasting. You can just sit through that space, let the body do the work, and let the body burn off that energy. That is just fine. Once you get used to it, I want to just give the highest encouragement, though. The studies that are like this, that show increased strength and maintaining of strength, always pair fasting with some kind of physical activity. And we see it in just low levels of activity, like walking, taking a bike ride, yoga, this sort of stuff. And certainly you can see it, with more intense activity. And so I think I put it on this slide. Don't, here we go. Yeah, so fasting activity level. What is the activity level that you are feeling comfortable with? Resting is okay if that's where you're at, right? Fasting can be a resting space. It does not have to be, even taking a walk, it does not have to do that. You can lean into it. It can be as gentle as you need it to be. But the thing in a little session like this that I want to share with you, realize it's okay to get out there, right? Like, it is okay. Fasting space can be a powerful, active space. You don't have to be limited in really any way. And in fact, leaning into activity in the fasting space is what really can break it open into this, strength sort of space, which I think is the most exciting to me. Yeah, I guess I don't have too many more slides on this. The mental strength, the control, getting control of it, and finding contentment. Yeah. Those are my thoughts of the day on strength so far. Let me know if you have additional thoughts or questions about it. I'd be very happy to review additional data to the extent there's interest on it. Are there struggles that you have had implementing something like that? What is your experience like in a fasting space trying to exercise? Have you either found it easy? Have you found it difficult? Have you found benefit from it, like they find in this study, or not? I'd be very happy to hear. All right, for this week, I will leave you with a little challenge. I will say, okay, where are your goals? Feel free to write them down. Feel free to share them in the comments. Where are you trying to head? Do you have a weight loss goal? Do you have a strength goal as part of that? I'd encourage you to journal a little bit about that and say, what do I want my ideal health picture to look like? And are you taking steps to move in that direction? So, are you dialing in on the healthiest food that's going to support both a weight loss process and a strength process? Are you leaning in on a fasting process? Are you training yourself how to do it? Are you finding benefit from that? Is that bringing down stress and pressure in your life, and are you enjoying it? And then what is an activity process that you can lean into, that you enjoy, that you might consider a leisure activity, that can help send those signals to the body? Hey, we are working. We need to be strong. Use this fasting space to channel in the energy to building and maintaining and strengthening the body. And the body will leverage that fasting space to remodel the muscles and building them to be as strong and functional as you can be. So let me know if you're diving in on that and what your experience is. If you have questions on it as you're doing it throughout the week, throw it in the chat, in the comments, let me know. And then let me know next week. We'll be back on Sunday, and let me know, how are you feeling? And are you feeling stronger? And that will be our goal. Real nice to share this space with you today. Have a great week. Be strong. Happy fasting. And we will see you back